Actually, I'm kind of excited about this. So here's the backdrop before we do a quick roll call and I turn things over to our guests tonight. A couple weeks ago, Carla and I met with some of our public safety leaders. It was kind of a response to some numbers around the jail population inching up over 900. And we met with these folks, and after about an hour of talking, there was consensus that this would be a good conversation to continue with our board and to make it available on a public basis. So I'm very excited about this. A couple things I took away is the importance of the interconnectedness between our departments, how much collaboration is going on, but how things that happen in one part of the county in public safety impact things such as our jail. I won't steal their thunder, but here's what I'm asking the board to indulge me on after we do a quick roll call around the room, is this. Let's turn things over to these guys and let them do their kind of overview of what they wanted to share. Then we'll open it up for Q&A with the board. And any questions you have, you'll have the opportunity to ask. But let's give them the floor and let them kind of play off each other for the first several minutes or first 20 minutes or so of this. And then we'll open it up to you for sure. Is that okay with everybody? So if we could start with Mr. Webster, we'll just do roll call. We'll go around and just say your name like we do in the committee.
Jim Webster.
Burger.
Bill C. Wilson.
Joe Hoffman. Mark Carter. David Murray. Dave Phillips. Dave Musa.
Andrew Gorham.
Ian Solano.
Dave
Kelly.
Ken Biondo.
Aaron Booker.
We'll get you a chair.
Mr. Tony.
Mr. Tassoni, thank you, and thanks to any of our other guests that are here tonight. I think I'm going to turn things over to the Chief Judge to start. I think we all know each other, but we have Mr. Klein from the Circuit Clerk's Office, Sheriff Caruana, Judge Doherty, our Chief Judge, David Dahl from the Public Defender's Office, and of course our State's Attorney Joe Briscato. So we'll turn things over to the Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that the Chairman has summarized kind of how this took place, which is that the jail population has been trending upward and popped over the 900 mark. And we were having some discussions about that when almost at the same time the Chairman said, we would like to hear from you guys in the criminal justice side as to your thoughts on the jail population and what's happening with it, what might be causing it. And we're not here to offer any hard and fast diagnosis, but when we had that conversation, I think it was eye-opening for the Chairman, and he said, I'd like to have everybody hear what he heard. So that's the reason we're here today. And I want to put it in the context historically of where we've been. I don't know if Gusty has the historical jail population numbers.
Here's from October 10th of 2010 through current. Last month we averaged about 906. I don't know what the high was. Bob, are you here?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
All right, so what that shows you is we had a spike in 2012, and that's when the board became concerned and tried to see how we might address that situation. And the response at that time was to inject additional funding into the state's attorney, the public defender, and the clerk in order to give more manpower to address that. And the trend was, as after that time, jail population went down into the 600s. So now, as you can see, a little bit after that is when we've had that go up. And I don't know if the sheriff can give us kind of an update on where we are.
Well, right now, like you said, we've turned it in the past 4 years, in the high 9s, and then 850, and then we've dropped to 820, 829, 825, and then around 8. Right now, as of July indicated, we're at 927. But it does include the federal inmates, and then we have, if you take those out, there's 33 in there. It's at 894 with the federal inmates. Actually, the federal inmates were making some pretty decent money in July. We made $89,000 off the federal inmates, but pretty much those are the stats right now at this point. We're coming around the low 900s.
So the other thing, Jeff, do you have the figures of the higher class felony charges?
This is about bookings?
Well, no, this is the class 1.
Part one.
This is it, the yellow is the part ones,
Yeah,
the more egregious.
yeah. Whereas it looked as though, I think we had a trend going of about, I can't see the number from here.
1,700.
Yeah, but it looks as though we have in half a year in 2018 reached a number that is, that looks like we're on a higher pace in that regard. So we just want to make sure you knew about that external information, which is apparently we've seen an uptick in the number of serious charges. That's going to play itself out with, at the bond decision, the likelihood of bond being set higher, more people being detained pre-trial, and the numbers going up. I should also note that the Illinois Supreme Court and the legislature has been pushing a number of measures to try to get less reliance on cash bonds. So those two kind of work in opposite directions. Those are outside factors. At this point, though, I want to turn it over to the state's attorney and the public defender, because we have some concern about whether there has been personnel-related ability to deal with our caseload. So turn it over to Mr.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Okay, we're moving over, Joe.
I've just been, you could just pass it around. This is a hard copy of this is really not a PowerPoint presentation, it's just a series of graphs that help you understand my part of the presentation. Each of you should be receiving one at this point in time. Dave, can you go to the first slide, please? Right, this first slide tracks the jail population for 2017 and 2018. The red numbers, or the red tracking, is the 2017 numbers. The blue tracking is the 2018 numbers. You can see at a point in time they begin to spread apart. This is where we can really see where the jail population has begun to pace higher. This particular graph I picked to show you because I think it's a pretty good visual demonstration of what we're talking about with your concerns that the jail population has begun trending up. Next slide, please. The next slide is two graphs in there. One tracks the jail population in 2016. The second graph tracks the assistant state's attorneys employed during 2016. If you can tell, the graph there during 2016 remains rather consistent, a low of 687 in the jail to a high of 832. We track this by pay period during the year. The lower graph tracks the number of attorneys employed from a high of 50 to a low of 44, but essentially the attorneys were between 47 and 50. As long as we maintained these levels in the state's attorney's office, it was pretty clear that the jail population was correspondingly remaining consistent. Katie, if you could go to the 2017 graph. In 2017, we begin to see a difference in the jail population. First, you can tell from the graph that it becomes more erratic or up and down. The other thing that I note in there is the low mark is 788 and the high mark is 825. What that should tell you from 2016 is we've now raised the low mark. So that's begun to trend up. Where we were in 2016 in the high 600s, now the low mark is nearly 100 inmates higher. Plus, if you look at the attorney count, instead of being essentially between 47 and 50, it's now running between 45 and 43. Now, I'm doing this based on my experience, but when we get to the last graph, you'll see that, well, hold on, Kate, let's go back one. What you're going to see is that once we start to hit below 45 when it comes to the attorney count, I think there is a corresponding where the jail population begins its fluctuation with regards to staffing as we have attributed it or we have tracked it. Now, when you go to 2018, which is the final graph, you'll see that the jail population is very clearly trending upwards, with a low mark of 796 and now a high mark of 906. Actually, we've had higher marks around, as the sheriff said, 927. But again, as you move from 16 to 17 to 2018, the low mark is going higher and the high mark for the year is going higher. And that's what we're referring to as trending higher. If you look at the attorney count, that's dropped now from 2016, where we were running with an attorney count of around 47 to 50. In 2017, attorney count was approximately 45 to 43. Now we've gone from 43 to 39 attorneys. And if you reflect back on 2012, one of the solutions was regards to staffing. I think that we have begun to see the jail population trend up, and as that has occurred over the last 2.5 years, the state attorney's office has tracked our staffing levels, and based on these graphs, I do believe that there appears to be a correlation between the staffing level and the jail population. Is that everything? No, but I believe that it is the chief cause of, or at least a good faith argument can be made that the staffing levels in the court system itself, including the state's, does reflect the jail population. I believe these graphs bear that out. I'll stop there and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Dave Dahl so that he can make a presentation from the standpoint of the Public Defender's Office. Dave?
Thanks, Joe. Folks, I'm going to stay seated so I can look at my numbers and make sure I give you all the accurate scoop, but there's just a couple of things I want to highlight. One is the thing that's not intuitive is how much the criminal justice system is all really interconnected and how much everybody relies on everybody else. And by that I mean that the only way we can get people out of the jail is by getting them through the court process. Everybody involved shares the same idea of doing it efficiently, appropriately, and fairly with all the requirements of the law. But what happens is that whatever the choke points come on, whether they come from Public Defender's Office, State's Attorney's Office, corrections, the courts, any place that you slow it down, it slows everybody else down. So that's one thing that, from a process point, I think is fairly straightforward. But some of the other stuff that folks who haven't been intimately involved in on a day-to-day may not understand is to the extent that we really do rely on each other at a greater level. When we've got new lawyers, and one of the things I'm going to tell you about staffing, my big concern is level of experience, is retention of staff as much as attraction of staff. But what happens is when you've got a new lawyer, whether it's a new public defender or a new state's attorney, not only do they learn process and the law and things from each other and from the courts, they learn it from the bailiffs, they learn it from the clerks, they learn it from each other. But yeah, the state and the public defenders, while they have oppositional interests in a specific case, everybody has an interest to make sure the process goes smooth. So something as simple that you don't learn in law school is where do you stand? Because it's different for different judges. What you do in this courtroom? How do you get your cases called? All those kind of things are things that you try to teach your own people, but we also rely on other people. Because people who've been there, it makes sense. We all want to get this thing done. We want to spend the time. You've heard it before, and you'll hear it again because it's the best phrase for it, but it's meaningful court appearances. We've only got so much time in every court day, and that's where the action happens. I mean, my folks work early and work late. They go to jail, and on the weekends do all other stuff, but you can't get anything accomplished outside of what you get done in court. And what happens is that everybody's got that same vested interest, but if somebody is slower, that kind of holds everyone back. And the reason that's really important is because my staffing level affects everybody else. Joe's staffing level affects everybody else. For us, my attorney count experience is very similar to Joe's, and my understanding is very similar to his, but for me, a much bigger issue is retention of good people, because it's an experience thing. When I've got new lawyers, you learn a lot in law school, but they don't train everybody. You don't go into law school first year and say, I'm going to become a public defender, or I'm going to become this, you're going to become a lawyer. And then they mess with you for a while, and you start learning stuff. But what happens is when you get into the practice of law, you've actually got to get into a specific area, you've got to learn all those things. And what happens is that if you're brand new, you still got to learn all those fundamental things that we all understand. It's just like going to any new job. There's a lot of stuff that you just need to learn before you can actually get down to what you really do in your job. The other part is when you get a situation where, well, in the public defender's office, we actually have the vast majority of pre-detention, or predisposition rather, detainees. That means the folks in the jail, most of them are folks who are waiting to get their case done. There's a certain percentage that are housed for the federal prisons. There's a certain percentage that are serving sentences. But the vast majority of them are folks that are waiting to get their cases done. So they can either get a sentence, they can get probation, they can get an acquittal, they can get sent off to DOC, whatever is adult disposition. But most of those folks are ours. Because most of those folks, by definition, are poor. They can't get bail, and they're entitled to a public defender. And so what happens is that my staff, and we love what we do. I mean, I've got, quite frankly, I've got a staff that does all this stuff in spite of what the county's able to pay them, rather than because what the county's able to pay them. They love what they're doing. But what it comes down to is that if you can get folks to the system, you've got to have everybody. You've got to have everybody in the right place, doing the right kind of job. And if somebody's brand new, like I said, that takes time. The other part of staffing issues become that when you have turnover, when you get rid of an old lawyer, I'm an old lawyer, when you get rid of an existing lawyer and you fill the new person in that position, that person not only has to learn that case, it's not a matter of like you're building a house where they just grab the next sheet of plywood and start nailing. They've got to relearn that case because there's a lot to it. They've also got to get to the point where they can do all the other things that I was talking about. And my experience over the last 24 months is that I have lost 22 people and I've hired 20 more. That's extraordinary. We've never been anywhere near that in terms of turnover. Part of that, frankly, is monetary. My office has not raised the initial entry-level pay in 11 years. During that time, law school loans have skyrocketed, so like I said, we get people who want to do this job, and then I lose people because they can't afford to stay and do it. But what happens is, out of the 20 people that I lost, and this is one of the things I wanted to make sure I got my numbers exactly right, out of the 22 I lost in the last 2 years, 11 had more than 5 years experience. 3 had between 2 and 4 years experience. And 8 of them had 2 years of experience or less. Those are the folks I lost. Out of the 20 people I hired, 16 of them were brand new, fresh out of law school, no experience whatsoever. One woman had a year's experience, which was invaluable because it jumps her right along the learning curve. And 3 of them were experienced lawyers, 2 of whom were recaptures, people who left my office, went into the private sector, and then came back to my office for less money than they were making because they really love what they do and they love doing it for the people of Winnebago County. But just in those sheer numbers, okay, I'm down 2, and I've actually, that's a consequence of the regular staffing flows and the inability to attract folks. But keeping people, for me, is really where we lose all sorts of time. And when we lose time, there's more people in jail. When you don't have as many people in jail, you save all sorts of money. You need less corrections officers. There's less food, clothing, medical costs that are direct for the inmates. There are other things that are a little bit less obvious, things like when you've got a jail that's too crowded, or folks that aren't staffed properly, or are on mandated overtime for too many times. It ratchets pressure up. You got too many people in jail, it ratchets pressures up, and there are physical altercations in the jail. It's just, it happens. And if you can reduce those, you reduce other things like litigation, like workers' compensation, and all in all, you have a better system. I would love to talk forever, and I would invite anybody who wants to talk to me in detail to do so, but I kind of wanted to hit my high points really of, it's not just getting people, because you gotta have the people in the courtrooms doing the job. But it's also experience, and the last thing on that point I really should probably mention is that, and it kind of dovetails with one of the things the Chief Judge was saying, is we're also getting, on the experience side, we're getting a lot of cases that are more serious, and that's partly because of thoughtful charging decisions on the part of the state, and other things. But what happened on the other end of it is right now, my office is currently representing, or engaged in 21 murder representations. I've got about 11 lawyers who are available to do something at that level. And that doesn't include the reckless homicides, the attempt murders, the other serious litigation. But when you've only got so many people who can do that, and I assume Joe's got some of the same problem on his side, because there's only so many people who are appropriate to prosecute such cases. But when you've even got those folks, and those numbers are smaller, the cases that take the longest, the cases that are most complex, that by their very nature will take longest, get dragged out even further because you don't have the right level of experience. And goodness gracious, if you lose someone who's doing a murder case, it's not like somebody else coming in and picking it up and figuring it out like a retail theft case.
So, again, we're here informational, and I think ask everything specific, but the question was posed, what's going on with jail population? And I think we would be remiss to not say that there is a connection between staffing and criminal courts and the jail population. And I think we proved that was true in 2012, when it allowed us to increase staffing and the numbers went down. That's what the doctors call truly something empirical, that if I give you this medicine and it works, I think I know what the diagnosis is. We did do that medicine. We stepped away from it in the last couple of years, but I think the results are predictable. And we're really just here to make sure that if we see it that way, that we share that with you for the decisions that you make. I'm not sure if you have any. So if you have any questions.
Thank you, Judge. We've seen a reduction in the State Attorney's Office, the Public Defender, the Sheriff's Department of Corrections. There hasn't been a reduction in the amount of associate judges and circuit judges. Has there been a reduction?
There has not been, but that is a resource that is paid by the state. So we're there. That doesn't affect the county's budget.
So has there been a lag? I mean, say 5 years ago, when we did have a good number of state prosecutors and public defenders, the judges noticed that we're able to close up court, we're able to get out of court here by noon instead of staying until 3 or 4 o'clock.
Yeah, that's not on this plan. That doesn't happen. Yeah, you know, all our judges are working, and what we have done is we have allocated some more time to the family courts when we got a new judge. And I think that was the last new judge position because the family courts was very much overburdened. There's only so much. We've had other ideas about things we might be able to do to address jail population that would require more staff. We're kind of trying to keep our heads above water with these two things.
That's where I was going with my thinking is.
Thank you, Mr. Booker. Mr. Wilson?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question would be to Chief Judge, the Sheriff, maybe Joe, and that's have you considered low-level crimes like marijuana to issue, let's say, a warning ticket with 1 or 2 times and then maybe go to the next step? In my opinion, it's been talked about, not just here, but in other areas. Is that something that you could look at?
I'd like to begin to address that. You know, right now, clearly there's a trend towards legalization of marijuana, medical marijuana, also a trend towards reducing the penalties. But there's no doubt that what you're seeing is correct, Mr. Wilson. But what I would say with regards to this is you don't have the types of offenses that you're talking about is those that are in jail. That's not what makes up our jail population. Those that have those offenses that you're referring to usually have accompanying more serious offenses that are actually keeping them in jail. So while your question observation is spot on, it's not the people that are making up
of our jail population unless they have accompanying more serious charges with that. But you're correct, that's the trend, but it wouldn't affect what we're kind of talking about here with our jail population.
And also to add to that, Joe, we do have those meetings every 2 weeks with your office to look at the low level of crime to get them out of there quickly and be expeditious. And we've done that for the last 2 years, so.
Okay, thank you very much. I got a bunch of people lined up, Mr. Fiducia, then Mr. Fellers and Mr. Jury, and I know there's a few other hands. Mr. Fiducia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This will be addressed to the public defender. Let me make a statement first that for those of us that did law enforcement, this board or this committee has to understand that the public defender's office takes care of Rockford, Cherry Valley, Roscoe, Rockton. And one of the things that are said to people when there's a felony is you have the right to an attorney. If you can't afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. And that falls right back on the public defender's office. Now my question to you was, you had what you stated was new people coming in that you're losing people, and you're losing people due to the monetary. What is the starting wage of a public defender?
Entry level is $43,000, same as it was 11 years ago, and ever since then, I think. And look, keep in mind that those are folks that need an advanced degree. I mean, outside of Mr. Biscotto and the first.
Okay, I guess what I'm going for. What is the entry level of a brand new deputy?
Anywhere between 60, between 55 and 60.
Okay, so let me wrap my mind around this. We've got a kid that's out of law school for 6 years, coming to a $43,000 a year job. And what he's going to do is he's going to get court time, because I've played this game many times. I choose my private lawyer because the public defender kicked my butt. Okay, that's how you pick a lawyer. But so you've got someone that goes into court for $43,000. He's got 6 years of law school, God knows how many bills, and he's making $43,000. And I don't know if Mr. Moscato has the same.
Starting salary is $42,000.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're talking about monetary issues to retain these people. Is this correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and if we could retain them, we could move them in and out quicker, do you think, because we're gonna have the experience?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and is that the reason why you think you're losing people is because of the monetary, because we haven't really?
I use lawyers for different reasons, but the greatest reason is monetary. I have some who leave for family reasons, I have some who leave for relocation reasons, unrelated to money. But the number one reason for people leaving the office is monetary. For example, if we get to the mid-50s in my office, you are probably a second chair in a felony courtroom handling major felony cases. If you go to work in McHenry County, I believe the starting salary is $55,000 and you work in traffic court.
Okay, you've answered my questions. I appreciate what you do. I just would like to really understand that these two gentlemen take care of all of Winnebago County, just not the sheriff's department. And I want you guys to realize every time they make an arrest and it's a felony, you question it. You ask them if they want an attorney. If they can't afford an attorney, one will be provided for them. And that falls right to that gentleman there. So thank you for what you do. I know you guys do a great job there. And I haven't arrested anybody in 3 years. But but the thing of it is, I understand where you're coming from. And I just wanted to wrap my mind around what the problem is, so maybe we can help you there. So
Thank you very much, Mr. Fiducia. I got Mr. Fellers and Mr. Jury, and I know a couple of hands.
Thank you. A few questions here. As we look towards the jail population graph right here, I was curious as to last year, May 13 roughly, was there a reason for this drop in jail population after right around the May 13 pay period, 13, 16?
I couldn't give you any, direct reason, and maybe I'm not understanding your question. Jail population is going to vary from week to week based on several factors. One, the types of cases that are coming in, how bond court is reacting to those, what kinds of cases are we able to dispose of, who's being sent to the Department of Corrections. It could be a number of reasons like I just listed.
I only ask because as I look at this, the trend lines, I mean, if you just sort of manually draw out the trend lines of these two graphs, they are relatively equal outside of that one drop. They continue the same trend upward, ending from May 13th to June 24th. We've just started a low, for whatever reason, which for a lower period, I want to know if there's a reason for that. Next question as it relates to that, then, do we have a breakdown available today of the types of crimes, percentage-wise, and different class of crimes people are in the population in the jail for right now?
That's available to us, but I don't have it right now. I mean, I know that I'm pretty sure that the jail itself would have that, but I know that that's something that data that we could get that's going to talk about who's in jail and what they're charged with. Yes.
Okay, I'm just interested in the different classes. And sorry, last question, Chief Judge, how much latitude does statute give you, your associate judges, when it comes to determining bond amounts?
A good degree.
Because I mean, this is something that's been in the news a lot lately, not just here in Winnebago County, but I think statewide and really nationwide. As we look at the people that make up our jail populations across the country, we're often people who simply, were they wealthier, would be able to bond themselves out of jail, but instead we have a large underclass that is unable to, and currently therefore sits, in our jail population. Given that, I mean, is there a solution in which you can look at these case studies on a case-by-case basis and determine based on means that, yes, a bond is still required, but, we might look to start lowering these bond amounts so that we can, this person is not a flight risk, right? They will make their scheduled appearances so that they're not entering the population altogether and get them out and get them moving.
Well, I want to be clear, the key phrase here is a case-by-case basis, because we do have to look at each individual defendant. So we don't go to this defendant, hey, jail population is low today, we'll be more likely to keep you. The jail population is high, we'll be more likely to go. We're going to look at it on a case-by-case basis. And we also are utilizing risk assessment tools in order to make sure that decision is as close as we can based on evidence-based modules that tell us, based on this person's history, based on certain other demographics, we think that this person is a higher risk, lower risk, and those are how those decisions are made. But I think Mr. Piscato got it right. He said the people in the jail are not the low-level offenders. It's not as though those are people who are going to get recognizance bonds or $300 bonds. For the most part, we are not filling up the jail with people like that. The other thing is that we now have, for certain low-level category offenders, by statute, they get $30 a day credit as long as they're in custody towards their cash bond. So that means if you're in that lower category of crime, if you can't make the bond, it's ticking off at $30 a day towards that. We also do what's called a second look on the bond review to make sure, for instance, if you set bond at a certain amount, kind of expecting that it would be made, we want to check back on that within 7 days, because if that guy's still there, you might want to take another look and make sure that there's a reason you're still there. Was the bond set too high to begin with? Is it just a situation where there are other reasons that person is still there? But this is an emphasis from the judicial viewpoint on trying to reduce reliance on cash bonds. It's also an emphasis of the legislature. So we've been moving in that direction, but as I say, the other part of the data is more serious crimes being charged that goes against that.
Do you leverage ankle monitoring and home confinement as well?
Home confinement and GPS monitoring. GPS monitoring is not in and of itself a useful condition of bond. It only relates to a geographic condition of bond. So what other jurisdictions have found when they've gone to a lot of GPS monitoring is they are flooded with all sorts of information that isn't easy. And so we have not seen a basis to come to you and say, pay for this GPS technology because we don't see it, at least yet, as cost-effective and evidence-based.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Fellers. Mr. Jury, then Mr.
Thank you,
Webster.
Well, first of all, gentlemen, thank you for what you do. I know that you struggle with your job due to the financial situation that we have in this community. And Mr. Donato, I understand that what you're going through. And you mentioned McHenry County, and I'm going to mention McHenry County. I'm going to mention DuPage County. I'm going to mention Kane County. We're not those counties. Those counties are rich counties. As you all know, we're facing a $2 million deficit in our budget this year. Next year, this board will have to go out and borrow money to operate. How are we going to get through this? I mean, it's a tough call. You know, people are leaving Illinois in the growth. And I'm telling you, I can't afford any more taxes. And that's the bottom line. So what can we do? How can we solve this problem? One, I would agree with Mr. Fellers, ankle bracelets or whatever. I mean, there's got to be something to reduce that population in the jail. I understand that we have a guest over in the jail that's been there 5 years. That's not a speedy trial. Why would we have someone in our jail for 5 years? I sympathize with you, and how we're going to get to this point where we're going to hire a lawyer. And even if we hire the lawyer, after we clean out the jail, what do? Do we keep them?
I'm gonna just interject on that. Some of those people who have been leaving work for these two offices. I think I've already answered the question about ankle bracelets. That doesn't move the ball, because that only says you can't be in a certain place. If you don't have a geographic restriction relevant to bail, I can't justify to you as the financial authority paying for that technology if I don't think it relates to safety and security. You have problems that are significant in terms of finance. All I can tell you is when we're asked, because there are financial implications to jail populations, when we're asked, why is it so high, we have to give you our best answer.
I understand that, Chief, but and so remains my comment. How do we pay for it without going down the street and asking for a tax increase, or when they bond to borrow money to operate? And it comes down to the sheriff's budget. That's what I was thinking. If you get them out of the jail, you're not feeding them, you're not housing them. I don't know. We've got some tough situations, and you all do an excellent job. But again, how do you pay for it?
Thank you, Mr. Jury. Thank you, Chief. Mr. Webster.
Yeah, some of my questions are been answered. I do have, curious though, has the, let's see, the severity of the crime, I don't know what you want to call it, has the low-level crimes and the high-level crimes, I don't know how to word this to you, has the correlation between them gone up the same? Or are you seeing more violent crimes now than you did the non-violent crimes? You know what I mean? So, like, every year you got a certain percentage of arrests that are violent, some that are non-violent. Are those two tracked about the same, or is one, you know, non-violent? Well, it seems to me like we hear or see a lot more violence these days.
I think I need to
Well, you know, we could run the stats through and do a graph through as far as when you're saying maybe a misdemeanor versus a felony, what type of felony versus what type of misdemeanor thing. I know that obviously we can make it's a good question that we could run that for.
And then also, you know, I don't know if you still do it or not. We used to have the work release. Are those numbers in with that 900 number? Or is that separate?
No, it's doing that.
Okay, so.
We're still housing them. I mean, if they go to work, but we're still housing them.
And how many of that 900 would you say go out every day and work on a job?
Off the top of my head, 20.
And then when they go out on their daily work days, do we still send them out with lunch, or are they on their own?
They're on their own.
And then
They don't have any more.
they all come back in at the same time?
Different times as far as the variables that they work on.
So is there any thing on work release versus them being in the house 24/7? What's the cost difference between the two? Is there any?
Well, we're still responsible when they're in our custody.
Yes.
So, if they get a medical emergency while they're in our custody, we have to take care of it.
Yes.
While they're out in the workplace, if they have a medical emergency, again, off the top of my head, this is going to be a witness count for that employer's situation to deal with. But when they're in our custody, we have to deal with it.
Yeah, and I guess I'm thinking on the line of personnel. So when you take the work crews out, and it takes a number of personnel to escort the work crew, correct? So is there a certain detail assigned to the working people too? No? So is there's no savings whether they're on work days or not on work days?
I'm not understanding the question.
What I'm saying there is that there's more of these low-level people in the jail. Is there any savings by letting more of them out on a daily basis?
So if we go back to what the attorney said, that's not the jail population.
Yeah, that's not your, but that's not your majority saying.
Right, so the jail population is not comprised of people who are receiving for work release. There are some, but it's not very representative of the jail population.
Thank you very much, Mr. Webster, Sheriff and Chief. I have Mr. Salgado, then Mr. Biano, then Mrs. Crosby. Mr. Salgado and Mrs. Grohl, sorry.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming to present this. I do have a couple questions relating to some of the individuals that have questions. So what I'm hearing is that basically your staffing levels are not able to push these people out of the jail, and that's why the jail population is increasing. I'd like to know, like, a breakdown, like a new arrest that potentially lead to incarceration of the population based on the 800, 900, 907. I'd like to know, because what I'm hearing is that you're saying that the staffing level is not providing enough bandwidth to get them through the system to potentially lower that jail population. And I don't know if that was the trend in 2012, that's why you hired more folks, got them through the system, and that's why there was like, so I'd like to know, because then there's two correlations, and you know, I want to know if actually crime has been going up, therefore the jail population has been going up, or is it really the staffing levels, as like what I'm hearing, that really is driving the jail population? That's one. Those are a couple things that I'd like. So I'm going to go on to the next one though, but I would like to see if you guys could address that. The other piece is I'd like to know, you know, the attorney ratio per client, if we want to call it, both the public defender and the state's attorney's office, to see over year from 2017 to 2018 to get some comparisons on that. Because I look at the jail population, you know, the first, 4 months of 2018, it's low versus 2017. But then we see a spike in May and June and July. So to say that maybe it's a staffing level that, it's not pretty that bad, I just need more details to dive into those numbers. I see that there is an increase from April all the way to July, which is the highest what I've seen so far. So I just would like to understand that, and if you guys could address that, that'd be good, because then it puts some detail behind it, and I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I'll take the first one. Here's, I think, a useful measure, because your question is, first part of your question is this the inability to process these cases, or is it more cases? in, I want to say it was 2015, we took in felony filings and disposed of, so we're looking at sort of two offsetting numbers, about the same number, about 3,000. We disposed of about the same number in 2016 and 2017. We're on track to dispose of that number or better this year. So the productivity has been the same. The number of cases coming in those 3 years, though, I view it as we're hitting our production ceiling at about that 3,000 felonies per year. And we are unable to be flexible enough to handle any more. So even though I think a couple years ago it was 300 more than that, last year 150 more than that, that is what is stressing the system. In years past, we could stretch and get up to 3,500 cases. Right now, we're at a level where we are not able to stretch.
Thank you, Mr. Salgado. Chief.
I think.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Questions about the,
Yeah, no, and I'll issue. Thanks, Judge. As far as the number of attorneys or clients to attorney, that is a little bit difficult to, it's not difficult to lay out, but it depends on what particular court, because my office staffs 8 or 9 felony courtrooms, a misdemeanor courtroom, a DUI serious traffic courtroom, it's got a bulk of felonies, delinquency court, which is essentially where juveniles are charged with criminal offenses, and we're also in 2 abuse and neglect courtrooms. So in, say, a misdemeanor courtroom, our numbers for our 3 attorneys there, and generally speaking, most of my courtrooms, when we're at staff, we've got 3 in each courtroom except for the delinquency courtroom and the 2 abuse and neglect courtrooms. We've also got like 6 specialty courts that we staff, which are the mental health court, which is the TIP court, veterans courts, a variety of drug courts. That's one for adults. There's also a family drug court that allows people in the abuse and neglect area that are have substance abuse issues that are kind of driving their involvement. And so we've got those things. We've also actually this year, and we're running into something that no one talks about, but I think everybody here at this table knows about, which is we keep on getting additional requirements dumped on us by the state of Illinois, and we don't get additional funds. For the last year and a half, the Public Defender's Office has now got to provide representation for any minor who's under 15 years of age at the time, who is subject to custodial interrogation for a variety of cases, essentially homicide cases or sex cases. But that's actually 24/7, and I do that through duty phones and rotation and so forth and so on. But that's just another thing that was put on us by the courts, or excuse me, by the state, not the courts. I don't mind trouble with you, something like that. But the thing is, in our more serious courtrooms, our felony courtrooms, the case numbers are smaller, but even there, to take the workload, because this is a process that not everybody's, we're not just jumping new, everybody's been working on this for a long time, and we're constantly trying to tweak and improve the process as best we can. But Judge White's courtroom, for example, focuses on drug cases. Judge Wilt's courtroom and part of Judge Collins's courtroom are dedicated to domestic violence cases. Those are different numbers, and those are actually high-volume courtrooms that have a little bit greater caseloads for the 3 attorneys I've got each of those, and they have to be staffed appropriately. But then I said, I mean, my murders, the 21 is what we got going on, 22 going on right now. Those I have to add on top of everybody else's other stuff, and there's only because there's only a certain group that are actually appropriate for those. So I could, in any particular context, I could tell you how many, but the numbers would vary widely, and it just in terms of regular raw analysis, you'd say, well then, take the ones who've only got 112 clients, and give them some of the ones who've got 214 clients, some of their cases, but it's not quite a translation like that. Okay. Is that answering from my side?
A couple points to add that I think helps flush this out. It's also probably good to point out that remember of those 39 lawyers that the state attorney's office has, 6 of them do nothing but civil work. They aren't doing criminal work. The other thing is, remember the state attorney's office has to also handle cases that have private defense attorneys, not public defenders. So when Mr. Dahl talks about 21 murder cases, that's not always pending. Some people are being represented
by private sector attorneys. To go more to your question, the caseloads have simply gone up because we've had reduced staffing. 3 of the general felony courtrooms used to have 3 lawyers, they now have 2. A misdemeanor unit probably should have 6, it has 3 lawyers in it right now. Our juvenile unit, which has historically, should have 7 lawyers, has been working with, was down to around, I think at one point in time, 4 lawyers, but we were able to bring that back up to 5 attorneys. And as I mentioned, I think the overall unit is supposed to have 7. And it's those are the places where you're seeing, and as the Chief Judge indicated, caseloads have remained consistent. So what's happening is as we reduce staffing, make the budget requirements, and make the changes we need, we are pulling from taking trial units with 3 lawyers down to 2 and absorbing caseload. And but in addition to that, there's the other responsibilities that the state attorney's office has.
Thank you. Mr.
Mr. Sagano, there's the chart that sort of answers your question. If you look at that gold line, that's the number of cases disposed, and in prior years, we were happy with disposing of more cases than came in the door. Keeping in mind these are 2 different piles, but it just helps you kind of see how you're doing. That continued to drop, that gold line, until about, I think that's 2016, 2015. And that's when we hit that 3,000 line, which we're pretty much on it. So we kind of have going, we're at these levels, we're able to resolve that 3,000 or so cases, maybe a little more. But any more than that now starts to put this any more coming in.
Thank you, Chief. No, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Salgado. I'm going to make people mad. I apologize. I did promise our Finance Committee a hard stop at 6. So we got time for Mrs. Crosby, Mr. Biondo, and then we'll wrap. Oh, and Mrs. Goral. We'll do 3 quick questions, and then we got to cut it for Finance. Mrs. Crosby. No, go ahead.
When you bring in a new attorney, what's the learning curve for them to have meaningful court time?
They have meaningful court time within 2 weeks. Yes, ma'am. But what it comes down to is everybody takes, on both sides, but I'll speak from my side, everybody takes it very seriously, and nobody's ever alone. So it's not good luck kid, do your cases, teach your people. There's people that are teaching, there are people that are in the courtroom with them. I mean, my office is very collaborative in terms of keeping an eye on one of the big things in my office is knock off help when you need it, more so because everybody's willing to give the help. But the other side of that question is it depends on where you're at. When you've got normal attrition, the normal model was, okay, you got a new lawyer in every couple, 3, 4 months, put them in the right spot where there's a couple of experienced people so they can bring them along. Now you've got courtrooms where there are 2 new people, and there's only 1 person to help them advance. The other portion of that is the folks will still do the job correctly, but it'll take them longer because they want to make sure that they're doing it right because this is people's lives. And that's an absolute thing that slows it down. It slows it down on my side, it slows it down on the state side. But I mean, everybody's doing something meaningful. Everybody's stepping up and doing stuff on cases within a couple of weeks.
Do you find that new attorneys come to you to use the state's attorney's office or public defender's office as a resume builder? And they stay in long enough to go into the private sector?
Ms. Crosby, we track that. We lose lawyers frequently was the last time we determined that. And what we find is that at about the 3-year mark, they either choose to go to a private practice or another state's attorney's office, or they made the decision to be a career prosecutor and stay in Winnebago. So it takes about that amount of time for that effect to take. I've lost, and this is a number of years ago, but I told accountability that we probably have the best farm system in the state. I've lost state's attorneys to other state's attorneys' offices all over Illinois, and also the private sector. There's one law firm here in town, extremely good law firm, I think in a 6-month period of time for 4 burglaries.
My experience, my experience is just a little bit different, and that's only because of what we do. It's no better or worse. We have a lot of respect for the other side, but there's only a certain group of people who want to be public defenders. And there's just a smaller group that just want to be in a courtroom and do want to try cases. But our experience actually is, while there's that group, because you do get a lot of responsible experience, our folks, most of the people that we lose want to stay. That's why I've got people to come back for less money, because they really care about this particular area of the law, and they stay in spite of, I mean, they've got responsibilities to their family and their loan guarantor and the rest of it. But we don't have as many of that as, it used to be true, but on top of that, what Mr. Biscotto says is reflected also in our fact. If you look around all the private defense firms in this county, about 70% of them came to the public defender's office, and that the further you get around, there's still folks in that like that.
Mr. Piano?
Yes, I want to just ask with regard to the fact that we gave millions of dollars back in 2012. We had a lot of attorneys, and everything seemed to go. We had rates of inmates dropped to 800. We didn't really lose a lot of people, but the point was is that something changed. We either have lost the cases, which we've just been told are basically about the same level. We've got a lot less people, so either the budget has dropped, we've lost that 5 million, or the people were going out so fast has lowered the qualifications, so you get less speed, if you will, or efficiency from the people you have. So did you lose this whole 5 million that we gave you back to or has the cuts, I mean, you know, there's been cuts, how much did you lose? As much to get from 59 down to 39? Are the ones you said somewhere?
We've never, it's been 11 years since we raised our starting salary. And as far as our group goes, back in those days, there was a big deficit, and we drew that down by adding the other people. Since then, I think probably late in 2015 is the last time I've had a full staff of attorneys. And that's because we haven't been able to afford them or haven't been able to recruit them. And so that's been part of the problem. But the other thing that you're talking about, at least as far as it impacts us, is twofold. One is you go through 13, 14, 15, 16, you lost 4, you hired 3. You lost 4, you hired 3. You lost 8, you hired 7. And then all of a sudden, yeah, just the economic realities have hit the last couple of years. And so what you're talking about is people being less effective is exactly what I was talking about, the experience.
So your budgets have remained about the same?
No, our budgets have
Have dropped?
dropped, but not that much. Not that much. They dropped, but not that much. Yes, sir.
Because we went through 6 years.
Absolutely.
Same thing for
Yeah, by the way, the authorized strength that the state's attorney's office would be at, given appropriations, is 50 lawyers. So we're down 15 lawyers essentially, although admittedly in 10 years I've been state's attorney, the highest lawyer is 50.
But they left. These people have left.
Well, it's
you
left.
Don't have the budget to get them back, or what? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they've left and they haven't replaced them in order to deal with budgetary issues. I mean, obviously you have people leave for different reasons. People leave because they're not doing their job, they're not earning their salary. So we have to part ways in front of us. But yes, we've had departures, and that's where we say now this isn't admittedly this is a low water mark for us. We have capacity to hire those back. We're working at it. It's very difficult to hire attorneys because it's a process.
But you do have some money to hire them.
Yes.
It's just that you can't get them.
Yeah.
And everything's
Yeah, we're struggling with that.
Thank you, Mr. Piano. Mrs. Gorl's going to bring us home, then we'll wrap this meeting with finance. Mrs. Gorl.
I have 2 questions. Number one, of our repeat offenders, and this includes juveniles too, how many of, what's the percentage of our population that are repeats? That keep coming back and keep coming back? What is our percentage that we just keep housing?
Well, are you asking how many people in the jail are repeat offenders?
Not only in the jail, but in juvenile detention.
That's a difficult question in juvenile because the process is a little more, the court is involved over a longer period of time. It's not like here's one charge, here's your case, and you're done. The court is involved with that child until the age of majority and sometimes beyond. But I mean, that's a sentencing discussion. I mean, is whether we're appropriately sentencing people to discourage them from committing crime. I don't think it will answer any of the questions about jail capacity right now, because that rolls back several years, and what could we have done 6 years ago to make this person less likely to be arrested? And by the way, they're right now, if they're arrested and detained, they're still presumed innocent of this new offense.
I understand, but the thing is that as we look at a lot of the people who are doing, I read it in the paper, they've been there before, and they've been there before, and now we have them back and we're housing them. How many are we housing that have been through 2 or 3 times?
I don't have that.
And that would be a good question, because we took out a lot of our programs of trying to rehabilitate some of them, and yet we're continuing to recycle and recycle and recycle. So no wonder our numbers are going up instead of down. They're smart enough to know that in the summer, our numbers always go up because there's more crimes in the summer. But in the winter, when it starts getting cold, we also start going up because now they got a place to live. How many of those are repeat people coming back? Our juveniles too. What are we doing for our juveniles to help them stay away? Some of them are committing some really horrible crimes. And you look at the people on the street right now, the type of crimes that are being committed, that all of you are being faced with. How do we get any control over that? Do we ever? Or will that just continue to be the process? They're just going to continue to do these horrific
You had a
crimes.
second question, you the ones I know. You had a second question.
The second question. Oh, you want to answer the first?
I can't answer the first, but I know the chairman I know is anxious. I actually do have an answer for you on the first.
The other one, it appears from the first slide, the overall bookings are down and serious offenders are trending down. Why not corresponding drop in the jail population? Why is if our numbers are going down, why are we not, why are the corresponding numbers not dropping in the jail population?
I just wanted to note, there is a long-term trend of crime going down, but in the most recent data for 2018, the number of serious offenses is up. For the people being detained. So that's what we're focusing on. You're right in the long-term trend, but right now, the most recent data shows that the charges for the more serious offenses are up over last year.
And I look at those more serious offenses, and that's where you see they already have a nice rap sheet behind them. And yet they're getting worse and worse and worse and committing worse crimes than when they started out. How do we ever get any type of a control over that? We had a 1% tax that was supposed to help us. Apparently it's never helped it, and we're out of money for it. We can't do that anymore. So how do we come back and try to reduce that type of crime and that type of person who's out there committing it?
Well, from the judicial standpoint, our role in this continuum of involvement is at the sentencing phase. And what we have attempted to do is utilize evidence-based sentencing methods. So not do what our gut says, because sometimes our gut is wrong. Do what the evidence says normally works. And keep in mind, there's a lot of offenders we know are not going to get jail time, just first-time offenders, low-level offense. There's a certain number of people that because the statute says they must go to prison, that's where they're going to go. It's in that area in between where the judges have sentencing discretion that we're really trying to focus our efforts on using the best evidence-based approach to what actually works. It's not soft on crime, it's not hard on crime, it's smart on crime.
Andrew, just to let you know, the Governor's Commission produced a report. Their report indicated that 97% of people released from prison returned to their location from which they came, and 50% of them are more likely to repeat an offense. That's what you're talking about here. And therefore, what that has triggered amongst the justice system, not only here locally, not only in the state, but across the country, is a push towards deploying innovative models and alternative justice programs. You've seen some of that locally. The creation of our crime commission, the focused deterrence model in the state's attorney's office. I think we're 4 years now, Katie, into the alternative justice programs, the deferred prosecution and diversion programs. These are all designed to deal with the issues that you're talking about. But we've got a lot of growth in that area. But the good news is that we recognize what you're talking about, and we are making changes to move towards innovative models that deal with exactly what you're talking about. Holding people accountable, but what are we doing with them after that so they don't come back? And the answer is, the news is good there, but it's going to take time to fully take hold.
And I also know that these ankle bracelets, the gentleman or woman, whoever it is, who's been doing drugs, selling drugs for years, are now confined to a home. But the nice part of it is all their customers come to them at their home. And I've heard this, and I know of this happening in certain areas, that this is going on, and this is happening. And if you report it, it doesn't get taken care of. But all their customers and all their dealers come to them because they have that little ankle bracelet. So where did we get any further with that?
And I know we've probably got to wrap because we've got one more meeting, and I appreciate all the comments. If it's okay, let's give these guys an opportunity to comment. Two things before we go. If anybody has any follow-ups, please feel free to follow up with any of these department heads. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All right. See you in a minute for finance.